Good morning. It's the second day of the conference. People probably had a lot of fun last night, so we'll get into it. Glad you're here. Sorting technologies have taken off, and we have three great speakers. First of all, we should thank Gene Jones. Isn't it great to see this conference take off again? And the fun we've had in the last 2 days. It's a long time coming. So this is about sorting technology. The one thing I'm interested in, and I'm sure you have your own questions, is I've been watching the trends for a couple of years on recyclables, and with all the investment, with all the new sorting technology, the actual amount of things getting sorted has actually gone down, the volume, right? Now, most sorting technologies do one of two things. They get you more capture rates, which is more material, or they do a better job of separation, which brings higher value, right? Those are the two things you try and do in sorting, is enrich the stream or capture more of it, right? So we're going to hear from three people who are very involved in the latest technologies from different sectors, and we're going to see what they have to say about this. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Robert Huffer. He's the Eastern Sales Regional Manager, General Kinematics, and he's going to talk about pre-sort, pre-sizing solutions that avoid wrapping and rotating shafts. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Michael. Well, good morning, everybody. Appreciate you all being here this morning to catch these early sessions. As Michael said, we're going to talk about pre-sort and pre-sizing, and some of my presentation will touch on and maybe do a little bit of a crossover between some of the construction demo side of the waste handling, and I'm trying to make some correlations and some comparisons maybe to some of the single stream as to how some of those can have some crossover and some value. So a little bit about General Kinematics quickly and myself. I've been with the company for roughly 29 years, seen a lot, and we get involved in a lot of different areas. GK itself, we've been in business for over 60 years, and we've had a really strong couple of years. We've had some great acquisitions come online here with us in the last couple of years, which has really expanded our reach and given us some new areas to focus in. And out in the audience, Thomas Schutz, our president. I just want to give him a quick intro here this morning, and we're excited to see where our future's going to take us. So some of the industries we do focus in is not just recycling. It's actually probably in the 20-25% range of our business overall, but we do get involved in foundry equipment, some other mining, and other bulk processing. And I think the reason I bring this up, and I think it's important, is that we do a lot of work in a lot of areas, and some of the equipment offerings, some of the solutions that we provide for processing comes from other areas that you bring into new areas that you said, I would have never thought of using this over here, and a lot of times there's good value, good reason to do that. So in the recycling area, we touch on a lot of different specific segments. C&D is probably one of our strongest, but not so much e-waste anymore, but some glass, some MSW. On the scrap metal side, we do quite a bit of work. Single stream, we're definitely, I'd say, still growing into. That's an area we're trying to build a bigger footprint for ourselves. Wood, biomass, and WT is waste to energy. That's another major part of our business. So why are we here today? We'll start with the challenge. As Michael mentioned, as the presentation said, we're here to talk about pre-sizing and pre-sorting. Some of that involves a lot of rotating equipment, whether it's some type of drum, whether it's some type of trommel that you see it down on the left-hand side, whether it's a series of rotating shafts, but all of those present some challenges with the material stream specific to single stream, a lot like C&D, a lot like MSW, a lot of waste streams where you can't control what's going to come in on your tip floor. You're handling anything from boulders of concrete to strings of Christmas lights to plastic bags to garden hoses to all kinds of different things. And we've a lot of this talk in our conferences have been, well, how do you better educate the public, and how do you better handle this at the curbside and before it gets to the tip floor? And I think those are all great things to talk about, but I think the reality is, that's not going to change. And I know Dawn talked from Waste Management, that was yesterday in one of her talks, about some of the high contamination rates just in the state of Florida. And I live down here in Southwest Florida as well, and I can tell you that in my area there's 30%, roughly 30%, maybe even up to 40%, people that aren't permanent residents here. So you have a ton of rental properties. You have people that either don't care or don't know your recycling mentality down here. So how are you going to control that from a reality standpoint? So what I'm getting back to is the controlled engineered method is where, in my opinion, where you need to attack this, and that's going to be at each of the MRF's tip floors, and how do you deal with that? So that's where we're coming up with the solution of the vibratory screen. This is a kind of a newer, within the last 5, 6 years. We've had some development in the design of our vibratory screens to allow us to get a much higher action, much longer throw or stroke of a machine. So this is one that we've had in service now for about 7 years, and this is handling C&D, but it was designed to handle C&D and commercial waste, and some what I'd say commercial waste. It's very similar to a single stream type material, not quite exactly single stream, but definitely lighter gauge material, bigger, bulkier materials. And that longer throw, that longer stroke is what gives us the separation and the travel rate of the material that we need to continue processing at some of the higher rates. So I got a little video here. Let's see if I can play it. Whoop, sorry. I think that'll play. Do I double click the green button? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we created a video here recently that just goes into more detail about the vibrating screen. So I'm not going to play the music, but kind of shows some of the components. There's two main bodies, the two red bodies here of the machine itself, and they run in opposition to one another. Because they are larger machines, they do have some dynamic force that goes into the structure, but because we run them in opposition with each other, they cancel and balance some of that dynamic force out. And that motion, that stroke with these newly designed springs that we've got really gives that longer throw, that longer action, that creates that separation of the material on the deck itself. Those are typically all steel finger decks, and those finger decks can be configured with different size configurations. We've used these in the scrap metal markets. We've used them in MSW. We've used them in some single stream operations. Primarily, almost all C&D operations will have some form of a primary finger screen up front. So just an animation here showing what's happening, but on the upper deck, all your larger materials would stay up on the upper deck as the finer materials drop through to a lower deck, and then off the end of the machine you're creating your fines below, and your overs, your larger material, which would be typically captured on two different belts and going in two different directions. So where we could see some value of this is anything big, bulky, bagged waste, stringy waste, some of the large film plastics. That could be all material that would stay up on that upper deck, where some of the materials you're actually trying to sort and go after with the plastics and some of the OCC and glass and other materials would drop through to that lower deck, making that separation. Now, I don't, certainly not saying this is a smoking gun answer for everything that's going to solve every solution, but I think it's maybe a piece that could add to an engineer controlled method as to how you also maybe utilize something else too that further helps that removal of those contaminants. So this is just a quick picture of where in a typical operation, this again C&D side, but we would have a tip floor. We'd have that type of a screen that's either direct loaded or could be apron fed loaded, either way. Just a picture of what that layout, what that system may look like as a complete configuration. In the C&D side, again, we're not going too far out of the single stream side, but in the C&D side, we do create this size separation here, where the finer material goes over to what we call a B line or a secondary line. It's a little more automated with just equipment, and then the larger, bulkier material goes over to more of a manual pick line. So here's just a quick diagram of a single stream process that we were actively working on, and just kind of showing you where would that screen fit in the process for that pre-sort, pre-sizing. And that's it right here. These were a couple apron conveyors to gain elevation. That was where we were looking to install the finger screen up front for a project that we were bidding on not too long ago. It's just another shot of what some of those finger screens look like. The one down in the lower left was a recent install we did here in the Southeast Florida area, quite recent, within the last year. But again, these fingers can be designed, configured in a lot of different ways and shapes to get that type of separation we're looking for. But overall, the machines themselves, the nice thing about this is the material itself, as it's going through the machine, nothing comes into contact with any of the machinery. All the machinery is below the machine, meaning not like a ballistic separator or another type of machine where the material actually passes through, or shafts that are going to be in contact with some of the material itself. Everything is below the machine that creates that separation. And because of that, that gives us a very high reliability in terms of operation. Also helps minimize any type of downtime. We've got the guys right here from Marpan, who's one of our customers, and we were just talking yesterday about they have one of our finger screens on their C&D operation. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, guys, but they just said, we just had a failure on the shaft, and it was roughly 13 years into the machine. So up to that point, they've had good reliability and good maintainability of the machine and the equipment. So that's great feedback to hear. This was another operation, another process we put together for handling MSW. And MSW is another very challenging and difficult material to process, because again, it's so unpredictable in terms of what's going to come through your material stream. And this was actually two lines, two apron feeds into what we call a side-by-side design, which this is all one screen on one side, another screen on another side. Each screen handling roughly 50 ton an hour. So this was a 100 ton an hour total operation of MSW. That was also here in the Southeast Florida area. Out of operation now, but was running for about 5 years altogether. Just trying to show some other examples of where these fits and how they work with some of the GK technology, and how we feel that some of that technology could easily be implemented into some of the contaminant removals for some of the single stream operations. So up here I've got just a couple of pieces of information. We've got a really robust website. We've also got a ton of video content in our YouTube channel. And my contact information is down below. So please reach out if you ever have any questions, or you got any thoughts or ideas, or even conceptual things you'd like to discuss. We're more than happy to help and engage in those conversations. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.